Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on Business Today here on KTN News. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. This Friday edition, we also recognize the fact that it is World Youth Day, and we are asking you, are today's youth up to task with market demands? Are today's youth up to task with market demands? That forms the better part of our Twitter poll question. So you can take part in our Twitter poll by casting your yes or no vote, and you can let us know what you think about today's youth in terms of whether or not they have the rightful skills to beat the market demands currently in the market. And let's also start by taking a look at how the markets are performing. And before we can even get into that, today on the show we are going to be speaking to Bruce Donovan, who is going to be talking to us about internet security. He is with us here in studio, and he is from East Africa, going to be talking to us about the latest developments and how the increase in access of smartphones is helping a number of Kenyans as well as East Africans access internet even better. So we'll be speaking to him on the show today. But let's start by taking a look at some stories making headlines in business. And Gulf African Bank has launched the Women Banking Service, also known as ANISA, in Mombasa to address women's needs on a professional and personal level. Speaking during the launch, Managing Director, Gulf African Bank, Abdallah Abdulkhalik, said women economic empowerment is the prerequisite for sustainable development, pro-poor growth and achievement of the Vision 2030 and the larger Millennium Development Goals and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Empowering women economically is said to increase the share of household income, which changes the home spending patterns. In fact, studies by IFC indicate that even though women entrepreneurs make up nearly half of all small and medium enterprises owners in Kenya, it is estimated that they have a very little percentage of the available credit.
Today we are meeting here. It's a function by Gulf African Bank in partnership with Safaricom. The function is to bring together women entrepreneurs from the Mombasa region. We have selected speakers from across the country from different experiences and industries to come and inspire women from this region to take up entrepreneurship. And Gulf African Bank's role in this is how to enable and create enabling environment for these women to go into business. The enabling environment meaning offering them capacity building, offering them credit facilities, and offering them expertise that they need to start off these businesses. There is a lot of emphasis, I think, globally on empowering women and youth. This is an area that Gulf African Bank is very passionate about. Even when we started this bank, we started with that vision that at the time when we started the bank, there were already 40 other banks in the country. So why did we need the 41st or 42nd bank in this country? We said that bank has to come with a value proposition. And that value proposition we brought to the market is that we want to focus and empower a certain segment of our community.
The Rockefeller Foundation, in partnership with the University of Nairobi, yesterday held a youth agriculture forum to encourage more young people in higher learning institutions to cultivate interest in the agricultural sector. Africa is home to approximately 600 million youth under the age of 24 and holds half of the world's uncultivated lands. And the Rockefeller Foundation plans to bring together the youth to recognize their significant impact on the economy through agriculture. The country's economy has not created adequate modern jobs for youths, and as a result, poverty levels are still high. A good number of the youth are being streamrolled into low-paying jobs in the informal sector and subsistence agriculture. Recently, the foundation launched an $130 million initiative that targets farmers in 3 value chains: mango in Kenya, tomatoes in Nigeria, and maize in Tanzania.
Those innovations, the good agricultural practices, the knowledge that will help improve agricultural production, you can help to make sure that those become common knowledge for the average farmer. You can also, through your innovation, make sure that 40% of what the farmer produces every year does not go to waste.
Away from that, and onto some more good news, the Kenyan cabinet has approved a plan for the development and commercialization of crude oil. A cabinet meeting earlier yesterday resolved that production will start at 2,000 to 4,000 barrels per day, which will be initially transported to Mombasa for refining and re-exported. For this to happen, the Eldoret Lokichar Road is being upgraded at a cost of 3.2 billion Kenya shillings. Also to be replaced under this plan is Kainuk Bridge to allow for larger and heavier trucks to transport the crude oil. It is envisaged that the crude oil will then be transported by rail and road from Eldoret to Mombasa. The first crude oil in Kenya will be refined at the Kenya Petroleum Refinery in Mombasa and then re-exported, which has now been fully acquired by the government through the Kenya Pipeline Company. Cabinet also approved the development of the Lokichar to Lamu crude pipeline, which will be the main evacuation and transportation route for the crude oil from Kenya in the future. Now, earlier, KTN News did speak to Paul Maimba, who is the chair for Petroleum Institute of East Africa, and he had quite a lot to say on when exactly we should expect the production to begin.
The government is planning to start next year in June. As soon as the process starts, we should start seeing the activities taking place. Now, just a point of correction, the crude will not be refined in Mombasa. It will be re-exported. So the refinery is not going to restart up for processing. The whole crude that will be produced at the initial phase will be exported. The government has come with two plans, which makes sense. The first one is to test the production of crude and use the system into Mombasa. And that's the first test. The second one is the full production, which is going to take the crude through the pipeline to Lamu. As that process develops, the government wants to test this side of the logistic equation. Now, the activities that will happen in between is already noted about the road construction, the rail upgrade, the tankers, offloading facilities in Mombasa. Those activities will take place between now and June next year. As soon as those logistical activities are done, then the test of running the crude down to Mombasa starts. Yes.
And going to pay less for oil, how long would it take before Kenyans start reaping from what is in their country?
Yes. Yeah,
so
look, I wouldn't say that when it starts next year, the palm prices will go down. Already, the country enjoying the best palm prices by importation. The issue of crude production and start moving it to Mombasa has nothing to do with the palm price. It is everything to do with the future economic change for Kenya. And this process is going to realign the country to different levels, not only for the palm price or the cost of fuel coming down, is basically another revenue source for the country. Currently, the country relies on tea, coffee, flowers, but this will be another one which will help the country generate revenue. The transporters will find work and drivers. Then the rail system appears again, then you have got SGR on the other side. So there are a lot of ancillary benefits to the country by virtue of starting this process.
So how do we position ourselves? We're not the only ones who are thinking about this. Uganda is going alone as well. Our neighbors, various of our neighbors are going alone. How do we position ourselves as Kenya, of course, to emerge top in this particular field?
Well, that's why the cabinet has approved the two-phase approach. So Uganda is still struggling to start. If you remember, Uganda discovered its oil a few years back, and Kenya followed. The difference is Kenya wants to start executing the production process through whichever means. Most of the guys who come to you, or the people may come with the opinion that this is not going to work, or it's going to cost the country a lot of money. How soon is it going to happen? But the reality is the system is going to start. Once that system starts, it's very difficult to stop it. And as you said, we are going to be ahead of Uganda by virtue of starting this process. So when you're ahead of Uganda, Uganda will start learning from us. Whatever we do is going to be a lesson to them and will be ahead of the game. So the cabinet approval yesterday of the two approach is actually basically putting Kenya into the front of oil production compared to Uganda, who are still trying to think about how are they going to take the crude. Yes.
How do we ensure that this so-called oil cast does not catch up with us?
Well, oil cast comes with a background, how you start the whole thing. Oil is natural resource. It comes from the communities. And sometimes if you look at the Nigerian scenario is that the big people or the government and the other guys came through the process and got the oil and leave the people around that area poor. And therefore it creates unnecessary tension and attacks. The difference with the Kenya process is there's already a process of engaging the communities around Turkana and around the route which the oil is going to pass. Through that process of engagement, and currently the government has passed the bill on the Energy Act and oil exploration, all that process helps engage the communities in the societies and prevent the possible tension. So in Kenya's scenario, I don't see things to get out of control. Look, when it happened in Nigeria and others, there are many other countries that produce oil, but nothing happened. Saudi Arabia is one of it, there's no war. America produces oil, there's no war. It's just a few countries in Africa that are associated with that, and you cannot use that as a general equation.
And that's Paul Maimba, who is the chair for Petroleum Institute of East Africa, talking to us about the exploitation of Kenya's oil deposits. Now, away from that, the Kenya Internet Governance Forum 2016 is currently underway at the Grand Regency here in Nairobi. Stakeholders are meeting to discuss policy and development in ICT and charting a way forward for the industry for the next 12 months. Among the most critical issues at hand are emerging legislation and internet security. Let's listen in.
Thank you so much for your kindness and also for staying, participating throughout the discussion. Thank you so much, Kenny, for your support. When you go back, tell Kenny.
And so there are different forums where people are discussing different topics on how exactly to go about internet security, as well as legislation of ICT regulations. Now, to discuss this ongoing events and other emergent issues around technology, we have East Africa Managing Director, if I'm not mistaken, that is Bruce Donovan, who is the lead for the region, and he's here to make sure that at least we can understand what internet security is all about. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Anytime. We all know that at the moment, smartphones are almost accessible to quite a number of Kenyans, though there is a bigger percentage that doesn't really have access to these services. But how would you say this has helped improve internet security, or has it made it worse?
It's improved internet security because it's created a whole lot of exposure to the internet. The internet's a very, very valuable tool, and now all of a sudden you've got 80% of the Kenyan population connected to the internet, can access data, and 50% of that is done through smartphones. So it's a very valuable tool in sort of assessing the potential future vulnerabilities, but it's also quite scary in the amount of data that's actually available for potential hackers or cyber criminals, because all of your personal data is now on your cell phone. Whether you access it via your cell phone or you store it on your cell phone, it's all there. And all that personal data is very valuable in a monetary sense. And hackers are trying to, I say hackers, I mean cyber criminals, are trying to exploit that for their monetary gain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, but what exactly are the opportunities that we have seen come out of access or increased access to the internet?
In terms of opportunities, well, there's a broad scope of opportunities. there's a whole apps essentially make your life easier in every single facet of your life or nowadays. But once again, there's also a whole lot of malicious app developers who maliciously plant code within these apps that actually make it quite dangerous to you in terms of data loss. Yeah.
As well as giving out information.
Yeah, but on the whole, I think that the application development and this sort of innovation, the technological innovations that are happening currently, the benefits far outweigh the risks. Yeah.
Right. Well, if you say the benefits far outweigh the risks, we have quite an unregulated industry, ICT industry in Kenya today. And while we are seeing the ICT bill being drafted or has already been drafted, there are quite a number of issues as well that need to be taken care of in regard to regulating this industry. Yes. Which of the areas particularly do you think need regulation? Is it the app developers, is it the hardware, or more of the software?
Well, IT governance is actually such a broad topic, and I pity the guys who sit and formalize this bill because there's so many different aspects that need to be taken care of, and security is quite holistic, so you can't really neglect any particular aspect of it. So there's no particular part where I would say is more important, because together the internet governance and internet security as a whole is very important. I mean, for example, you can have the most up-to-date security systems, be it you've got your firewalls, not to get too technical, but you've got your sort of this onion layer of different defenses. And at the very core of this onion is your end user, who, if he's not aware, he can click on a phishing link, for example, and give away credentials, company credentials, and then all of a sudden, all that investment that you've put in creating this onion layer sort of holistic security effect is for nothing, because your data has been leaked out.
Well, government authorities have had their own reservations when it comes to dealing with the internet. And a perfect example would be the issue, or at least the example of Snowden, where he was able to leak information that maybe was very crucial to the United States. And so Kenya as well is having those reservations on how much access they should give to internet users, how much information should be poured out on the internet platforms. But then again, how do we make sure we strike a balance when it comes to access to information vis-a-vis security?
Yeah, I agree. A balance certainly needs to get struck, and we see around the world now people are developing their IT sort of policies and stuff to try and get this balance. There's a lot of stuff on the cloud now, for example. You mentioned Snowden, like a lot of his stuff was leaked to the cloud to countries where they have less strict data regulatory laws. And it's the balance is to sort of there's no sort of easy solution, but the balance is to sort of be as secure as you can with still allowing the freedom of speech and the freedom of commentary that we as population sort of require and deserve, I suppose.
All right, and going forward at ESET, how exactly do you ensure that people's information is protected, and that they actually know, especially with corporate companies, that they know exactly what they should put out there and what they shouldn't put out?
Yeah, well, I mean, how we're going to go about it is, we obviously offer the platforms to ensure the actual security, but we feel that education is important. Getting the general populace aware of the potential threats out there, and learning about the things such as your ransomware attacks, where malicious software is you run malicious software on your computer without you knowing, and it locks up your whole machine and encrypts data and encrypts company data. And it's important that we educate the populace and we get everyone aware. We bring cybersecurity and IT security threats more sort of frontline. And more in the general population's face.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bruce, for talking to us on internet security. Bruce Donovan is from ESET, East Africa, talking to us here on KTN News. Away from that, the Nairobi Securities Exchange has come out to try and give direction in the ongoing interest rate debate. From its perspective as engaged stakeholders, the BOS is supportive of bank self-regulation, and currently the NSE has 11 listed banks which collectively constitute 42% of the total trading activity of the NSE and are an attractive asset to institutional investors such as pension funds, which are able to generate sustainable incomes for pensioners of the bank's consistent dividend payouts. The BOS further indicates that a low interest rate regime is socially beneficial as it also protects against unwarranted lending practices and can be used to guard against the exploitation of vulnerable members of the society. And let's now move on and take a look at other stories. Let's now take a look at a story, actually, rather an interview that was earlier done by Linda Ogutu on News Center regarding that interest rates debate. And we'll be back with more. Don't go too far.
Many efforts have been done in the past to bring down the interest rates, but it has all been in vain. And what motivated me to draft the bill is to try and look for a means of bringing down the rates. If you remember 20 years ago, this was tried by Mheshimiwa Joe Donde when he tried to enact some legislation to cut down or to cap and regulate interest rates. And he was successful, and his bill went through. I remember the first one, which was sent to the then President Moi. He sent it back to Parliament with a memorandum. It was actually the first ever bill to be sent back to Parliament with a memorandum. And he recommended some amendments. That was in January year 2000. And by August, his amendments, his recommendations were amended. And now the new bill was taken back to him for signature, which he did. But there was like a technicality because when they amended the bill, they did not change the date of the...
Lying to us and not being honest.
I think for me the question is, why now? Why not before? Because if their decisions are driven by the business needs, what has changed? Is it just the tabling of the proposed law, or did they have the intention? I feel that the timing of their reaction is suspicious, and therefore I would be hesitant to give them that leeway.
All right. We've seen, of course, issues around interest rates making quite some headlines for the past, I think, 4 weeks or even months before. We can take it as far back as March this year. And CBK as well has come out and said, you know, banks need to cut down on their rates as well because they're too high. But are we getting there? Are we making progress in achieving that?
Not yet, because there is a big difference in terms of what the rates are. When you look at what they pay for deposits vis-a-vis what they charge for the loans they give, that gap is a little too high, meaning that you know, on one hand the deposit is being taken advantage of, and on the other side those who take loans are also being charged amounts that don't make business sense. So that gap is too big. And then the fact that the KBBR rate is so much, surely there's a lot of room for them to play in terms of doing business. So I would think that first that gap needs to be breached, and then I believe that you know that space that they have makes business sense. I would say let's take this drastic action now and see what happens.
All right. And then, of course, that brings into question issues to do with corporate governance and banking institutions in the country today. And the regulator, that is CBK, has really come out strongly to emphasize transparency, to emphasize that banks are actually adhering to their obligations, financial obligations as well. But then that looks like a journey. And while it's appreciated that banks are now being cleaned up and that they should get used to the new normal, there are some banks that are still dragging their feet.
Yes, there are some banks that are dragging their feet. I would say that governance or corporate governance is a fairly new phenomenon in this country, and it will take time to transition, in the sense that it starts from the appointment of the board of directors, who are supposed to drive corporate governance in the entity. So if that already is wrong, then time needs to be given for that to be changed, because a lot of people get appointed to boards without understanding what their role is. And if you have it wrong from the top, then you've got a problem all the way down.
Down to the bottom. All right, let's move away from the issue on corporate governance and interest rates a bit and talk about, well, it's in relation to corporate governance as well, talk about Uchumi. Uchumi is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, chain of supermarkets in Kenya, as well as East Africa, you would say, if you like. But then again, it's gone through ups and downs past years, and part of it has been blamed on understating of results, as well as their financial performance or financial status, also attributed to poor management or bad management. And there's now some sort of breath of fresh air that they could be getting a bailout. But then again, how sure are we that even this bailout money will not be misused and we'll still see Uchumi being driven back into losses?
I think the good news is that entity is now on the radar screen. Everybody is watching. So I don't think that it's likely to go the same route before. That said, I think the question is, what is in place now to stop a similar thing happening? And as taxpayers, I think that is of interest now. It will go beyond the Uchumi shareholders. So we're all watching to see what's going on there, to see who's auditing the firm, who's doing what in terms of the organization structure. And it's also my hope that those who've done some wrongs in the past will now get charged, so that then we send a message very clear that those who do wrong, later it catches up with them.
All right. And finally, we are having a conference as well that has been organized by the institute that is ICPSK, right? And what is it going to be about? When is it going to start? And what should we expect from it?
The theme is on governance. Governance and improving institutional performance. It's now a known fact that entities that are well governed outperform their peers in the same industry. The conference starts on Wednesday and ends on Friday, and it's part of our efforts as an Institute of Corporate Governance, the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries, to impact governance in the country, and we believe that through such forums we will help our members improve their governance skills. We've meticulously selected presenters and speakers in that conference, and we've also tried to blend all manner of institutions, starting from the judiciary, parliament, and private sector. We believe that through interaction of all these three, then we are impacting on corporate governance, so that it doesn't really matter where one plays, whether you are in the legislature or in the judiciary or in private business or wherever, the rules still apply.
Still apply all around, not just to the banking sector, but all over.
Precisely.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Tom. It's such an honor talking to you. Tom Omariba is the chair for the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya, talking to us about corporate governance, as well as bank regulations and bad dates as well. Away from that, each year, about 50,000 Kenyans join the job market from both the private and public universities. However, it is becoming increasingly difficult for these graduates to secure employment opportunities. KTN's Lofty Matambo now brings us a story of a Kenyan who decided to make a billboard displaying his qualifications to the eyes of potential employers.
Patrick Mudhomi knows his hot spot, roasters along Thika Road, Nairobi. This is where he advertises his skills and qualifications. I am a graduate of Bachelor of Communication. I also did CPA to Section 4. Please give me a job. Though many passers-by ignore his large writings, he has every reason to do this.
Wacha nikuje barabarani, niinue hii mbana, na niinue juu kabisa, ule mtu ataona akiwa kwa gari yake na pengine ako na kazi mahali naweza kufanya, atanipigia simu aniite.
Patrick studied at Chuka Private University. He lacked school fees and therefore could not finish his last semester of the last year of his degree course.
Hiyo ni mambo nilikuwa niambie mtu yoyote ule angetaka kunipea job, nikae na yeye chini nimwambie mimi nimebakisha hiyo semester moja.
Patrick laments that the few employment opportunities in Kenya are for those who have connections with the powerful people.
Kazi ziko lakini wengi hawajui ile mtandao unaweza tumia kupata kazi.
This is Mudhomi's home in Nairobi's Mwiki Estate. Joyce Mudhomi is his wife. They got married in the year 2013 while he was a second-year university student. They are now blessed with a pretty baby girl, Sheila McKenna, who is now 2.5 years old.
Kama ningekuwa ni bibi peke yake nika naye bila mtoto, sidhani kama ningechukua hatua hii. Kwa sababu hii hatua nilichukua wakati nilipoona mtoto wangu ameanza kukua, anataka kwenda shule.
Actually naona atafaulu sababu zile simu amereceive mpaka saa hii zinanitia moyo.
McKenna's father looks upon this banner to open up doors to enable him cater for his family's needs.
Before then alikuwa anauza serviette, tissue, air fresheners, vitu kama hizo.
Apart from Patrick, Gilbert, who graduated with a degree course in electrical engineering from Technical University of Kenya, did this on June. 2 months on the road, he says he has never received any positive calls for job offers. These Kenyans received attention in equal measures, some criticizing them for seeking unnecessary attention. But this could not be a strange scenario in the world. In the year 2013, a Briton by the name Adam Pasiti advertised his qualifications on billboards using his last cash of £500, equivalent to 66,000 shillings. In 1 week's time, he received over 1,000 calls, leading to his employment at one communication firm in Britain. As 29-year-old Patrick wipes off the dust of his famous billboard, it is estimated that about half of the over 50,000 graduates from Kenyan universities every year are not fully backed for the job market, a 2014 Inter-University Council for East Africa research revealed. However, Patrick is optimistic that he is not among the half-baked graduates.
In times where the level of unemployment is above 40%, probably graduates will use any means to make sure that they get employment. But will this one work, at least for Patrick? Lofty Matambo, KTN News in Nairobi.
Thanks, Lofty, for that story. And that young man joins us now live from our City Center studio. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. It's been quite a struggle for you searching for a job. But then again, would you actually agree with the fact that some experts think that today's young people lack the skills?
Actually, yes, because in Kenya, it is not that there are no jobs, but the job market is actually very complicated. You will find that those who are jobless and they want to get a job, they don't have that connection, so how they can assess those jobs, and then they are able to assess many to get a job.
So you've been trying to search for a job for quite some time now, and that has been quite a struggle. But why exactly do you think it's been difficult for you to find a job?
When I exited from Chuka University, having not completed my last semester, it was too difficult for them, potential employers, to give me a job because they considered that as an incomplete course. And by the mere fact that I had done up to CPA Section 4, and in combination with this Bachelor of Commerce degree less 1 semester, I was convinced beyond reasonable doubt that with that qualification, actually I can be able to get a job. But in fact, my whole problem came where I could send my CV, but when I'm called for the interview, then it was not, I could not produce a full set of documents which could actually convince the potential employers to give me a job. Right. So I found it a bit difficult. I found it a bit difficult because they could think that I'm still in school, but by then I had left because of the huge balance fee that was actually that had accumulated.
I'd like to pick your brain on this one. The government has been trying to create some opportunities for the young people, as well as give them access to credit and some funds, that is through the youth fund. But do you think if you were to make a choice and maybe divert from what you want to do as an accountant to something else, do you think it's going to be easy for you to get credit or capital for that matter?
Some of those government offices are occupied by people who are subjective than being objective. In fact, you may find that someone may be at a prior need of those funds so that he can at one time help himself either to pay those fees or start his certain business. But you will find that there is a long process. You will get to go around the circles before you assess some of those funds, which sometimes people will, some will, in fact, majority will not have time to endure all of that so that they can assess those funds. In fact, I'm not saying that the government of the day is not doing enough. They are trying, in fact, that is why you will find sometimes they are channeling huge budgets to the National Youth Service, to that youth fund. But sometimes you will find that that money that is there, some of those, or rather majority of the officers there, they take as if that money is theirs, or they shouldn't give that money to a certain people, or you understand what? So you will find that common mwananchi who has that need, in fact, may not access those funds because of all that problem, the steps to take to assess it, and the terms and the conditions. Sometimes I've ever visited many of those young fans in Tharaka-Nithi, from where I come from. In fact, the office that I visited, I was told that I must find the other 5 people or 10 to form a group so that we can assess that fund.
Assess the funding. All right, and then it became so difficult to get it. But tell me something. You actually put out a mini billboard of your qualifications, and you actually walked with it. How has it turned out? Have you received any phone calls with some job offers?
Actually, I have received many calls. In fact, I have a record of some of the calls that I received there, and the received calls that I was able to access from my phone. The received calls were like 1,255. The missed calls were like 722. The tried calling were like 101. The SMSs totaled to 603. That is huge. In fact, that is huge. They overwhelmed me. I saw that Kenyans sometimes would like to assist, and the majority of those who were sending those SMSs were sending me their emails so that I can send them my CV. So that they either can interview me, and the others were encouraging me to continue like that, and eventually I will find a job. That one give me a lot of morale.
Has anyone offered you a job at the moment?
The direct job, I've not been offered any direct job, but promises that I can get a job. Let me present myself, let me present a CV, come we talk or end on one-on-one so that we can see how we can help you. But someone has not told me that come, report this date. Again, that is it's not very practical because I have to show what I have, the qualifications I have, experience that I have, which are many are demanding experience. Which experience do you have? Honestly, I cannot say that someone has offered me a job directly, that come to the job regardless of whether you have qualification, experience or not. Come and we will offer you a job. Majority have been promising, of course, which are possible promises.
Okay, well, Patrick, thank you so much for speaking to us, and we wish you the best. Hopefully you can get a job as soon as possible so you can be able to support your family as well. Thank you for speaking to us. Patrick Mudumbi is a job seeker, and if you watch that story and have an offer for him, you just might want to take him through the recruitment process as well. On the other side, we've got Trix Ngado, who's going to tell us what's making headlines in business. Trix, what do you have for us this afternoon?
Thank you, Joy Doreen. So we're going to take a very quick look at what's making headlines locally and globally. So first of all, we're going to start with the Business Daily, and the headline is with regards to the contentious bill whereby MPs do not want a bill that's going to cap off interest rates for banks. So this is what the headline on, this was the headline on the Business Daily. Banks dangled 30 billion SME loans. So this is a way that the banks are trying to find in order to help people feel that this capping of the rates is not really a necessary thing. And then you're having something on the global front whereby Saudi Arabia doesn't care about killing oil prices. So Saudi Arabia apparently is flooding the world with oil because it can. And of course, this is aimed at quelching the competition so that it can remain at the helm of as a huge oil producer and keep making money for as long as it can with the oil exports that it has been making, which is actually big revenue foreign exchange for this country. If we could take a look at another paper, we are having here the Standard Digital, and the headline here, government readies to conduct mineral survey. So this mineral survey, of course, is meant to find out what kind of minerals are there in the country and how they can be exploited to enable the country make more money out of that front. And then we're having more global and actually local stories taking center stage on the other side of the paper. And if we have a last paper we could take a look at, we are having the Wall Street Journal, and the headline here is Maastricht from EU cradle to anti-Europe stronghold. And some more stories on the Olympics, an interesting one about the green water in the pools, and just very interesting informative pieces about what is going on the global front. And if you want to know more, these are the papers that you need to take a look at. Back to you, Joy.
Well, thanks a lot, Trix. And earlier today, knowing that it is World Youth Day, earlier we did ask, are today's youths up to task with market demands? 58% of the respondents on Twitter said no, they're not up to task. And 42% said yes, today's youths are up to task with market demands. Well, that's your feedback regarding our Twitter poll question this afternoon. And well, if I might go through one tweet just to see exactly what you had to say. Someone here is saying, Jacob Oyuki is saying, yes, they are up to task, but as much as we can't blame the government, we still need financially. And Omoro is saying today's youth